Hi, this is Sheila with Conscious Conversation Central, and it is Saturday, July the 14th, 2018. And this time I'll actually, say who you guys are. Um, I'm with Lisa Flamino Rush and BZ Rieger, my two gal pals, my posse. And carrying on from our last conversation, actually, sort of, we're going to say, how are you feeling, Lisa?
Good, and you?
No. We already established how I am.
We already had a whole conversation about that.
Yeah, we did.
I've been feeling really good. Just really expansive in my connection. Like, I've been noticing that I've relaxed into it. I'm going to call it, I'm leaning into the turns now. And I kind of like when I don't know a thing, because I'm savoring the deliciousness of not knowing a thing. And looking for the clues and the signs of what's to come. And like I was telling you ladies earlier, I'm noticing that I know exactly what I need to know, exactly when I need to know it. So it almost feels like just right before something's going to be revealed, I'll just know it. I'll just feel it. Or I'll see a picture of an ending, like a turnout, a possible solution to a situation maybe that I'm presented with. And it's almost like I'm able to choose the ending. Sometimes there'll be a couple, and I'll sort of visualize swiping through them. No, I don't want that one. I don't want that one. Yeah, I want this one. And I'll like choose it. And then within minutes, I'll get confirmation of that turning out. Or I'll have a pondering of a thing, and I'll just get a sense real quick, or a feeling, an impression, if you will, of maybe it's a conversation. Sometimes it's me having a conversation with somebody, and then I'll get a physical confirmation that we had that conversation, that they heard it, I heard it. I mean, a physical confirmation that this communication has happened. And it feels really natural. It's not at all what I was anticipating or what I have been waiting.
So just for clarity, because I'm aware of what you're speaking of there, but I'm not sure, because I heard, wait a minute, what's she talking about? When you're talking about communication, you're talking about some communication you've had on a quantum level, perhaps what you now might even term telepathy, and then you will have conversation in the physical that confirms that yes, indeed, that conversation did happen in the quantum.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. And I'm having a much easier time tuning in with just about anything or anyone. And so it's more than just communication, because it's moving from being a real linear conversation with me going, yeah, well, I wonder, and how about this, and well, what about that, to me coming in and sort of experiencing the other being.
Can't hear you very well. I don't know why. Something happened with your volume again just then.
Well, there's a lot of crickets, and what are those things that make the noise? Cicadas, yeah. They're super loud, so that might be messing with my microphone too.
No, they're just giving you a backup chorus. That's your backbeat.
So I'm noticing too that if I just tune in and think about a thing, it's almost like I can move through it and experience it. So I'm feeling more at one with everything, but kind of like you were saying, Sheila, earlier in our last recorded conversation about all of a sudden you just got it. It went from a concept to more an experiential knowing. And I've been doing that with a lot of things too, like feeling one. It was more a concept to me until just recently, because now it's more of an experience.
It's so.
So, yeah. And it's really, really natural, and it's always been there. I can just see in so many how I've ignored it or tamped it down or dismissed it as inconsequential. And that's not at all what it is. Yeah, so I've been feeling quite sublime. As a matter of fact, I feel sometimes like I'm levitating, like I'm barely making contact with the earth. I've been having some experiences too. These are just some of the things that I've shared with Sheila that I talk about. Like I've noticed in between the waking and the sleep, I'm still having not very good dream recall, but I wake up feeling exhausted, and I feel as though there's something at the tip of my tongue, and I want to go back to it, but I can't recall it to entertain it. So I know that I'm very busy in the dream time for sure, but what I have noticed is in between waking and sleeping, I'm starting to notice a vortexing or a swirling, and it will pick up speed, but it won't disorient me or make me feel dizzy. I feel pretty at one with the swirl. And then I notice that it feels as though I'm moving somewhere. I feel movement, and it kind of feels like a falling. And it calls to mind some dreams I used to have about flying. And I would have these dreams that I was teaching a levitation class. And we'd all be sitting in a circle, Indian style. And I was trying to explain what I do quite naturally, and I was having trouble finding a way to describe what I was doing because I could do it. I couldn't tell you how to do it. And I woke up remembering my thought process and the words that I shared with the class, and it was just that I know. So I had everybody, I said, first, I want you to try to levitate. Okay, everybody try. So we were all sitting while I call it crisscross applesauce. And everybody was trying, and it's really hard to levitate. And there was nobody going anywhere. And then I said, okay, now envision that you're falling through the earth. So fall into the earth. And when I did that, I could just feel myself slip, and there was like a movement without any movement. And the minute that I felt as though I was going like molecularly through the floor, the minute I had that fall sensation, the takeoff would happen. It would be almost like, and I said, I know it's counterintuitive to fall when you're trying to rise up, but just trust me. And people were actually doing it in the class and in the dream, and then I woke up. So I'm telling that story because in the swirling, I'm feeling that falling sensation, but I'm not falling in any way that's scary, or I've had the dream sequence where I fall, like, it's a scary and I wake up like I've fallen, and it's not anything like that. It's, and then I realized at one point, this happened just recently, that I was moving, but I wasn't leaving. And I recognized that I was inside the interior corridors within. And all of a sudden, because I had used that metaphor to describe the sensation to myself, I saw a door, a corridor, and there were doors, and I was slowly walking along, and I was like talking to myself, and I realized that the more that I stepped forward, the more the hallway kept going. And then I heard that it was the infinite within, and that the more that I traveled, the more that I would see. And I had an awareness of being able to open the doors, and because they were just sort of passing me as I was going through the corridor. But I had a sense that that was time and space travel. Even though I hadn't really gone anywhere, and I had a sense of moving, I really wasn't moving, but more traversing the within, the unexplored within. I don't know. And I just had this vast sense of the more I looked, the more there would be to see. So it was this infinite, this constant pursuit of, well, it felt like expansion, of course, because every step just created more as far as the eye can see. So I don't know if that's what you want me to share.
Well, you never shared that with me before, so I love all of what you're sharing. I love that. That's new.
Okay. Well, I thought I told you about the corridors this morning.
Well, you briefly said something about the corridors. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
One of the things, Lisa, to my senses, you gave a really detailed illustration of the difference between well, it's creation is the big overarching envelope to it, but of creating and so using your abilities, all different things. I'm just going to use the big envelope of creation, of creating from a multidimensional and being from a multidimensional space rather than a linear space. Because at the beginning of all of that, you were talking about, being in the flow and not, you just know what you know when you need to know it at the moment that it arises. But I also get this, so in other words, that's what I'm saying. That's a different, not only are you describing it differently so people can get a sense of it, but you're feeling it differently. My sense is that even those words, which are much bigger, more expansive, more, give more room for all those possibilities, still are kind of constricting on what you're actually feeling and doing. Is that, yeah, okay.
Yes, because any words or any scriptures limits it immediately and detracts from the experience itself. So.
Right. Absolutely. But if there's a way to I just want to confirm that, because I could definitely feel that. So one of the things for people to play with as they were listening and feeling into what you were experiencing is that you're actually showing an experience. You're describing, because you didn't seem satisfied, so you were attempting to describe, you're actually being in the moment, but in a multidimensional moment. So it's not like you don't need to know what you don't need to know until you need to know it, because you always know it. It's that you never don't not know it, right? but simply when you get to the moment that you call it up. So it's not like you didn't have something and you hit the button, quick, I need to know that, and it pops in, right?
Right.
So since there's never any lack and there isn't any hierarchy and you already are all that is, you simply flow in the thing. It's like, I'm trying to think of a linear metaphor, you don't have to think, oh my God, where's the, I don't know how to drive the car yet. Where's the manual, right? You've already had those. You are the totality of all that ever was, is, or is going to be, because that's you in your multidimensional state.
Yeah.
So because I heard a bunch of people think, well, that's cool, but how does she know she's going to know in time to know? Which is kind of a linear way to look at it, but I can see that there's a little trepidation around
it happened often enough to know.
Well, yeah,
it's 2020,
right? And it's another way to say that it's a good, you described in word picture, a really good thing of what a lot of people, and it drives them nuts. Well, where's the date? And people will say, well, it's event driven. So that's another reason for the quote unquote, the way you had phrased it was something like, well, I don't need to know something until I need to know because it's right there. Well, the other thing is you're multidimensional. So as things are always, you're a creator. You're creating in the moment. So as you're creating things, you're creating and expanding all the different possibilities. So just to do a linear drawing, because I'm not sure how to do it quantumly, but you can't know something here in two different places from the linear trying to grok it until you move through, because you're different. The totality. So in other words, I just said you know all that ever was, had happened before, wasn't going to happen, so on and so forth. But there's more. Since when you move from one event happening, and it could be all sorts of things. It isn't just like, the event or whatever, right? All of the quantum multidimensional possibilities open up. They have expanded yet again. So it's not the same until that event, right, happened. Would be one linear way to look at it.
Yes.
Well, I got really excited there for a second because it like with my finally grasping the fact that, I have always been more connected than I thought I was for a long time.
Yes.
I grasped what you were saying there in regards to, and BZ just explained it even better in that manner. So it's like it's always there. Because again, from previous video, we have this tendency to compare ourselves to where we are on that ladder of abilities or money or whatever the case may be, in that linear sense. And we really can't anymore, because we never could anyway, but I'm just saying that. Well,
Yeah, but that's a dead horse, so we won't beat that one. Let's just play with this one.
Right. That's really cool.
And one of the things too you said that just jumped up at me, Sheila, when you were talking about that, Lisa, you had mentioned when you smiled about it, I could feel what you were feeling all, when you were reliving it as describing it, that it was when you got more into you were talking about the specifics of conversations that were quantum conversations. And you realized that your labeling, you're pegging, your kind of descriptor, which you were then using that as your reference point for how it would be. Hence, anything that wasn't like that descriptor was absolutely not what it was supposed to be describing. And it's right. Did I say that correct? So, and as soon as you felt it, you went with the feeling and the knowing, and the hell with the descriptor, because you realized that was just yanking you off the telephone.
Yes, exactly. Well said. Yes. It's way more innate and subtle.
Yes.
Than anything you could ever imagine. If it's just plain old you, then that's it. Because I kept holding it that way. It's just plain old me. It's nothing special.
That's actually right. It's just so. It's just, remember I said it's just the next, Abraham used to say the next logical step. It's simply so. And so when you get there, when you move to those quantum jumps, it's hard to back out of it. It's hard to tease out of it, to describe what it is, because it's an innate and it's just so. So you have to really think hard, which means it's putting you into the linear frame, which means it's taking you out of that moment of ability to do that anyway. So you're making yourself forget how to do it, if that makes sense. When you do it, when you describe it that way, when you try to describe it out that way.
Yes. Well, and there are other things I do innately that I couldn't describe either, like, how does my heart pump blood throughout my body the way that it does? I don't really know, but it does, and I trust that. So it's just me, it's how I operate, and I trust that, and that's a real different way.
Yes.
To look at everything.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you actually shared it in that manner, because comparing it to how does the heart pump blood, because I think that's an important distinction that folks, I don't think I got that for a long time. Obviously, because even I kept saying I wasn't connected, but no, yes, we are.
And another way to play with that, the next expansive step on both of what you both just said, right, is if you think of just thinking about, things that you do kind of automatically, right? So breathing. So on the one hand, you could say, well, breathing, I just do, it's innate, right? And you can take that a step further because, and I know a lot of people have had experience with this, intentionally or not intentionally, that when you focus on your breathing and you actually become your breathing, it actually changes the quality not only of the breathing, but how it replicates, how it feeds, how it expands, how it shifts your energy in each breath that you take, right? So the same thing with talking about being in the moment, being in your quantumness, being in your multidimensionality. When you trust and you go in that flow, in that playful flow of knowing space, and it's not a knowing up here. So if you say, well, I don't know, you get just let that go. Then you actually, it's as you said, Lisa, in your thought of the different quarters and the doors that you're, that's how you actually open those doors. In fact, you dematerialize the door and realize that it was never a door because there was never any blocking and there was never any compartmentalization of it. It's as you come to it, it's there for you to see and step into because you're choosing to. Because I, think that was a little vague, quantum-y, but I think that made a little bit of sense from a linear standpoint.
Well, I got it.
Okay.
So, and I'm not, I mean, we all know I'm not as quantum-y yet. So just, but I'm okay with that. I know my time's coming. I think that might be what the weirdness is. Some of the weirdness has been about.
Well, and one of the things it brings forward for me is in the last video we were talking about, the examples you were talking about, Sheila, about the weirdness and the the conversation that drove by, and and I was talking about, well, might see things out of the corner of your eye or whatever, and a lot of things that I've been playing with intentionally for the last week is that, and I never held it as inside in the building, which would be kind of like closed or rooms or something. It was more like, one of the first ways when I was, again, because I was trying to think, okay, enjoying it, and then after I was playing it with it a bit, then I thought, okay, well, how would I describe this if I was going to try to translate it into a little bit more linear type metaphor? And it was forest within forest within forest within forest. So I was in a forest walking the dogs, and I was experiencing the forest. And I could, so you might say that at first I was, in the linear, forest, walking, just a human being, and there was a couple dogs, and we were walking and whatever. And then I was into the playing and the noticing, which takes in the trees breathing and all that kind of stuff. So there's this energetic envelope that I create in being and doing that. And I realized that as I directed my focus, I directed my attention to be drawn to what wanted to call me or to behold. So be and open and for me to behold as I walked. And when I was doing that very quickly, I was playing with it so I could actually walk into another forest that was within the, quote unquote, we're going to just say this linear forest that I was in. The colors were different, much more expanded. The tree species were different. The fragrances in the forest were different, and the dogs noticed the difference. So it wasn't just me who was experiencing this. We were literally walking into another forest within a forest. And so again, as I played, and another thing beckoned, called to me, unfolded, so that I was beholding that, another one opened up, and I had this sense of, and Sheila, you mentioned something about which made me think about sharing this about, weren't you talking about like inside, going interdimensionally inside your expansion?
Well, I know Lisa talked about that a little bit, but you're talking about when I had that feeling I was being pulled out of my body? No, yeah. I think that was Lisa. Her expansion of the corridors.
Yeah.
She was moving internally.
Okay, right. So that's what made me remember this particular thing. Was 3 days ago, I think, although I don't do days well. But it was, so a lot of times we think from the linear, reality's out there. It's out there. I can look at it, it's real. And we don't realize that everything, although we're sure realizing it now, whether we want to or not, or where we've been paying all that much attention. Whoa, it's really obvious. And we're grokking it because it's right in front of our face. But everything comes from within. So that inner space is antimatter. And we pull it out and put it into the matter. We shape it, we create it. We do that. Each of the we's do that. So you could think of time travel, or you might think of a starship traveling. They're going to come from some way distant planet. I'm just going to make up. I think I'm making up. I don't know. Alpha Quadri, and it's 52 million light years away, and they've got to travel at the speed of light to get here. They come through a portal, which is an interdimensional portal. Interdimensional portal, because we ourselves are the stuff of stars. We ourselves are our whole galaxies within us. And so that traveling, that transporting, so just like I was describing with, which is what made me think to share it, with the forest within forest, as I was playing and as I was going on this journey, and on one way you could just say having a really cool time in the forest with all of these different colors and trees and smells and logs and moss, but different than and each one kept changing. But I was actually traveling to other planets. They weren't just a forest. You might say, well, on the west coast of the United States, and it was different forests, or forests, on planet Earth, or forests in planet Earth. I was traveling through forest within forest within forest, because I was experiencing this, connecting with it, and creating it at the same time. And so I was traveling interdimensionally to these different forests on different planet solar systems as I went. And I had, and I'm not quite sure how to describe this, but I had a knowing of that, a certainty of that, an understanding of that, comprehension of that, even if I didn't have the linear, of course I didn't even care about that.
Yeah, I was going to say proof.
Yeah. Well, I had proof all in front of me, because, I could watch two other beings external, but I was thinking more, how do the mechanics, kind of like the linear brain tries to mechanics it down, and
yeah, how can I be here and there? No, I get that, but that's where the interdimensional part comes. Right. Wow, that's a really cool experience too.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah. Wow. Well.
And I think, I just heard a couple of folks saying, well, how do you do that? How do you get there? How do you get that ability? Or how do you, it's kind of a bunch of different questions come in different ways. So I don't really can't pull the shape of one particular question, but it's, Lisa, you had described it. That's what I was saying. You gave a really good example of to get out of the linear of it. You had described it of, well, I can only feel and quantum see how you describe it, not linear, but it's staying away from the knowing and the labeling, the cognitive linearized knowing and labeling. And going more with the knowing and the being there. And again, just as we talk about, Sheila was talking, Lisa was talking about how, well, I don't know how my heart works. and the blood pumps, but it does, which is a good thing because I'm still sitting in this chair. Right? And occasionally the mosquito comes by and goes, oh, juicy blood, I like it. I'm glad your heart's working, Lisa. Cool. Right? But again, and then I use the thing about more breathing and how, because a lot of times if people, they can breathe so that they stay alive, yes, because there's oxygenation and blood pumping. But if they shift their breathing just from a purely linear, more a robust health standard, they actually give more oxygenation to their blood. Because a lot of people breathe very shallow. It doesn't matter if you have, I'm not talking about someone with asthma, I'm just talking about normal people. They just, since they're always in a rush and they're always kind of compartmentalizing them, they're always, doing a very fractured way of being, their breath is very shallow. And as soon as they, think about breathing, right? And shift that, it actually changes how they feel. Their skin will change color, and because it is more than oxygen. So what I'm saying is, that's a good analogy, Lisa, what you did with the heart and the blood and then with the breathing, because you can take it a step further. Same thing, you can regulate your number of heartbeats and not need to have your heartbeat faster to pump more blood. You can actually just have it's almost like the pump has more volume expressing and expelling to it. But the reason I wanted to point that out is that's how. It's when you're trying to chase something, and I think you made reference to this as well, Lisa, when you're trying to chase something, it's always going to be out of grasp, because from a linear way, you might say you're looking for it in the wrong place. You're trying to grab it in the wrong place because you're going kind of like this, and it's really right here that it's always been.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that reminds me of, being unhappy with the way that your hair looks in the mirror, and so you take the comb and try to comb the mirror to fix it. What's happening over here? Until you get the comb in the hair, no change it. Yeah.
Right. And the other thing is, and the words don't, I can rattle off a few words right this moment. The words, if you think of them just from a brain linear thinking of them, they absolutely don't really cut it or do it justice. But noticing and playing and trusting and they're really kind of all tied together, and it's almost like they're different facets of the same thing that you're doing. Is how you do that, because when you are those things, when you're being those things, when you're emitting those things, when you're ensconced in those things. So again, that's different facets of the same thing. You let go of, transcend, dematerialize the labeling, the linearization of something, the maybe comparative, hierarchical have, don't have, there, not yet, kind of a thing from it. And yeah, that's kind of interesting. So you also decloak that vibration that I'm kind of trying to describe and talk with using linear words, which are wholly inaccurate, is actually a mechanism to decloak that which you're wanting to see or find or feel or have, or, you know, that cool power. I want to do that. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm going to have to listen back to that one. Lisa's shaking her head yes, and I'm not surprised at that I didn't get it and that she did, because where the two of you are right now and where I'm at right now, it's like I heard it went in, and I sort of kind of get it, but I will definitely go back and listen to that again.
Well, except a bunch of people saying, well, tell her what you don't get, and then maybe she can say it again.
Well, no, it's like, okay, so this is one of those times where I heard every word you said, but I didn't understand any of them.
Okay.
It's and I don't know that doesn't, it goes along with sort of the weirdness that I have had. I heard you. I didn't cognize any of it, and I don't even know why. Because I did hear it. It's almost as though either my attention or my brain was somewhere else, and I heard it, but it didn't make it in there or something. I don't know how to explain that.
Well, my sense of it, based on what you just said just now about that, is that the brain, so the linear needing to label and such component went off, you know, could say, well, I heard it, but I don't get it, and it's off someplace else. And actually what my sense is that it's actually, it was encoded. What I was describing was encoded, and you're actually, your being, your heart, the real part that's doing all the work, that's in charge, we'll say, from the linear, is decoding it. And it's helpful to have, you know, the brain, you know, over there. I didn't get it. Okay, great. Go over there. Okay, great. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, it did, because, you know, I sometimes I guess I have trouble distinguishing. No, it just makes perfect sense. I don't even know how to explain that it does, but what you just said makes perfect sense to me.
And your body feels different.
Yes. Yes, it does, but I still don't get it. I mean, you know, intellectually, I'm going to use that word.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. But I don't think I have to. I mean, I'd like to, you know, but that's probably smarmy talking.
Yeah. Well, but another thing just for you, I mean, the way that you're now learning that you uniquely, you work, flow, with, create, are in, be, all of these things, whatever they are. So your body is now, whereas before you didn't pay attention, or you didn't listen, or you know, I don't know, shut it in a box or put it on the roof or whatever, you're actually getting the cues, feeling into the body. So there's a shift and change there. It's almost like if, and this isn't accurate, but if, let's say, your body was, your brain is going, oh yeah, the light bulb's gone on, and it's kind of playing with these different things of how it might take that inspiration that's come to it. Again, I'm just using placeholder words here, and now all these other things. So whatever I said really wasn't the thing that's doing it. It was you meeting the encoding and decoding it that is doing the whole thing that it's doing. And it's not a linear encoding and decodement, so it can't come first and foremost from the brain intellectualizing.
Okay. Well, that makes perfect sense too. So it's getting easier and easier for me to be okay with not getting something intellectually in that moment. Overall, period. I mean, I've always known that, you know, well, I won't say always, but I've felt that, I mean, I've even said our subconscious takes in everything regardless, you know, so I know it got in there. I just can't repeat it back, and I don't. On one level, I'm certain that I got it, but on another level, I'm not. So,
yeah, for me, and you know, in various stages of various big ass giant quantum jumps, I found that when I would have something that I would describe in a similar way that you're describing or that we're watching, it was a quicker, to use linear terms, a quicker getting it, sticking the landing like as if I was a gymnast, than when, you know, I got it, you know, up here kind of a thing, because then it was, you know, I'd forget or part of it, or I wouldn't quite, you know. So actually sticking the landing as a gymnast is a really good, that's an energetic, physiological metaphor that really translates really, you know, so you land, you come off the balance beam and you land and you stick the landing, and it's that core resounding resonance within. And because in a lot of instances the brain is just a fluff box, it's, you know, that has been held up as the thing that's the end all be all, that it's the have, and it's none of that. It's just as illusory as the rest. It has a, you know, the higher mind, absolutely, and that's a partnership, and that's what we're all transitioning into.
yeah, okay. Wow. Wow. Okay. So I'm sensing that this is the end of this energetic envelope in the moment of now. Do either one of you have anything you'd like to add to this, or no? No? Okay. Well, I will have everybody's usual stuff in all the usual places. And I guess we'll see you next time.
I just